Hello and welcome to the No Hair All Heart podcast. I am your very bald host, Mookie Spitz, and the one with all the heart today is Claris Bud Hyett. Welcome aboard the podcast, Bud.
Okay, so to start with, I had a 68-hour birth. My mother was 68
All
hours.
right, hang on, Bud. We got the whole story here, but let's give this a little context for our viewers and listeners. You have a diagnosis, and the clock sadly is ticking. And what we're doing here is we're talking about your life. We're sharing your life is a bit of a testament, but you've got some fascinating stories to tell over many decades. And from what I understand it, you're a small town kid, moved to the big city, did pretty well for yourself, but you have a lot to say not only about your life, but about American history and culture through the decades. And I loved hearing some of these stories, and I figured our listeners would love to hear some of them too. Do I got it right?
Yes.
All right. So let's frame this up. So you're diagnosed, sadly, again with cancer, but you're a survivor. You've been fighting it for several years now. Is that right?
August 12th of 2016, they gave me 90 to 120 days to live.
Well, you're a tough son of a bee because it's now 2025.
Correct.
So you told the doctors pretty much to go screw themselves.
No, I was very polite, but
But
I,
in no uncertain terms, you said you don't want to die, at least not yet, and you've been a trooper for years.
okay, if you've seen the movie Wind Talkers about the Navajo code talkers in the South Pacific with the Marines,
Yes, that's
that
based on a book that was very good.
that was my father's outfit.
No kidding. All
He was
right.
he was wounded on the beach of Guam.
All right.
They told him on the beach he'd never make the hospital ship. On the hospital ship, they told him he'd never make Hawaii. On Hawaii, they told him he'd never walk again. He got off the troop transport in San Francisco and farmed for 24 years.
All right. So it sounds like the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. Since they told you back in 2016 you only had 3 months, now it's been 9 years, and you've been going for broke. So that's terrific. You've been keeping the tradition alive.
Correct. It's and it's you just got to keep going. You just got to keep doing. You got to keep pushing the doctors and keep going.
Well, that's inspirational. What's changed recently, though? Why does the situation seem more acute than it has been over these years?
Okay, so I have multiple myeloma, a bone marrow cancer.
Yes.
It I went for an experimental drug treatment where they modify a protein, inject it into your body. It hooks onto the cancer cell. Your white blood cells now recognize the intruder, and they manufacture a T cell, which takes the cancer out of your body.
Sounds like you're on immunotherapy, revolutionary new therapy,
Yes,
personalized medicine.
yes. And in May of last year, they came in and said you're cured. What has happened is it has so weakened my body that I now have MDS, which is a precursor to leukemia, and they can't cure that. My body is so weakened that the medicine for the MDS puts me in the hospital. So they, with tears in their eyes, the doctor and the nurse practitioner came in and said, we can't do anything more.
Okay. So, again, sadly, after your 9 year successful battle, you've got this secondary oncology condition. And it seems like the medicines and the side effects, your body is weakened to the point where you really only have how long now to go based on best estimates?
A couple months, maybe 4.
All right. All right. So that gives us a little bit of context here, which is you're a trooper, you're a fighter, you've been kicking ass and taking names for a decade almost. And now the situation has changed, and now is a good time as any to share some of the stories, your observations, and insights of a good, long, happy, productive life.
Correct.
All right. So we can qualify the good. It's clearly been long. How old are you now?
I turned 81 last week.
Mazel tov and Gesundheit. That in and of itself is a great accomplishment. And now let's get to the happy part. When you look back on your years, do you feel that you've accomplished everything that you set out to accomplish?
Yes.
That is outstanding. I don't think anyone at their last few days, few months, saying anything different would be any less happy. I think that that's wonderful.
My son is a senior soil scientist with the United States Department of Agriculture. My daughter in law works for an agribusiness startup. My granddaughter has a doctorate in chemistry. Her husband is in banking and he cannot talk about what he does. He does investigations in banking and he can't even talk to my granddaughter about it. So I feel I've been successful in getting my son raised, but there's been some real problems doing it.
Well, it sounds like based on the standards of our society, they're all self-actualized adults.
Yes,
That is a great reflection on you as a parent. Are they happy as you are? Well, how are they emotionally?
they're happy. Yes, they're happy. They're satisfied.
So I'd venture to say that's probably even more important. The bottom line of the spreadsheet is not only a great career engendered by great education, fostered by a great dad, but they're feeling good.
Yes,
Congratulations on that score, too. That is a lot to say, as any parent could attest.
yeah.
All right, I think that frames us up pretty well, Bud. Which is, we're poised at a moment in your life right now where you have an opportunity to share some of your insights, stories, what you've been through, and you've already inspired me based on the few minutes we've been talking. So let's roll our sleeves up a little bit. You were born in the house that your father built, or something like that. Let's begin at the beginning.
Okay, so the beginning is I had a 68-hour birth, and my mother was in labor for 68 hours, and the doctors had my death certificate filled out because they didn't think I was going to survive.
So from the beginning, the odds have been against you.
Yes,
And you said, screw that. Even before you were born, you said, screw that.
yes.
Nice.
So, growing up on a farm, thoughts about that. Today they talk about ecology. We didn't have that word. We did what we had to save the ground and to work the ground for the next year. We moved on to a farm that you couldn't raise hell on with a barrel of whiskey. And we built 7 miles of fencing surrounding a square mile farm in order to be able to move the livestock and stuff.
Now, by
We,
we, you mentioned your family.
yes, this was my dad, mother, myself, and my 2 brothers.
Where? Sounds Midwest, U.S. of A.
Yes, Western Mercer County, which is a western county in Illinois, 35 miles southwest of Rock Island, Moline, Illinois.
All right. So that's the heartland of the heartland.
Yes. And we did some innovative stuff. My father, we milked cows because dairy brought in steady income the first few years. But then dad got tired of milking cows. It's every morning, every night. So when a cow came fresh, had a calf, and had a cow, he'd go to the sale barn and buy 4 more young calves, the same a week old. bring them home. We put ground feed over all four of them so they all smelled the same, because the cow recognizes her calf by smell, not by looks. And we turned the four calves in, and now we had this cow raising four calves. We didn't have to milk her, and that gave us 2 hours more every morning and 2 hours more every evening to be in the field to increase our grain gain, yield. And we haul feed to the fields in the winter and to get the manure and humus spread out again, because in the spring most farmers were busy hauling manure. We were already in the fields plowing, disking, and planting. My father was a very innovative thinker. And in this time, when I got into my mid-teens and my late teens, I was training horses for spending money. In 1963, 30% of the people, the population in this country, were involved in agribusiness, farming, handling the crops after they were harvested, etc. Today, 3% of the population. There's been a huge transformation.
And there's been a shift away from these small private farms into huge agribusinesses as well. Consolidation of these small farms.
Correct. We farmed 320 acres and it was considered a good sized farm. Today, you have to farm 3,600 acres in order to break even.
And a lot of it is mechanized, whereas I'm assuming you, with your father and your family, were out there hauling ass.
Right. We would go around the field 4 times, average 8 foot at 3 mile an hour. Today, they go around the field twice with planting equipment, taking 36-foot swath instead of 8, and they're doing it at 12 mile an hour. It has totally changed.
So, how did you go from being an old school farm boy, as you described, growing up on your father's farm, evolving from milking cows to, sounds like, breeding some cows,
Yeah.
to farming, to becoming a professional person?
Okay. So, first thing is, growing up, we did not have a television. We read. And I realized at the age of 10, reading Jack London's The Sea Wolf, where Jack London isolated 3 characters and discussed his concept of social Darwinism. This, I couldn't talk to my teacher. We were in a one-room schoolhouse, because my teacher didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And fortunately, one of the neighbors was an extensive reader, and he and I got to talking, and it introduced me to books, and not only what is said in the books, what is meant to be said in the books, and the purpose of what is being said. So it gave me a very intense uh, reading habit. And finally, when I was 11, I raised 10 runt pigs in order to get enough money to buy a television.
So that opened up the world to you, I'm assuming, at that point.
Correct. Correct. And it, it was rural. If you watched the TV program, The Waltons, it was very similar to that, except it was more rural. And I got through high school. I went to college for a year at the University of Illinois. I did not like it. They were training me to have a job. They were not training me to learn. They were not training me to think. I was very, very disappointed. I worked for 2 years.
What did you study at the university? And how did you actually get in, considering I'm tacitly assuming that you were the first person in your family to ever even attempt higher education, let alone complete it?
Well, I had a cousin 2 years older than me who went into aerospace engineering. And I idolized him. So as a consequence, I followed him into engineering.
So you had a role model in the
Yeah.
family.
Yes. And there were three of us in our generation that went to college. So you're right. It was a whole change.
What did you study as an undergrad?
There I studied engineering.
Okay, so even with engineering, you felt that it was just geared toward a vocational training kind of syllabus rather than educating you on anything that you really wanted to learn.
Right. After reading Jack London's The Sea Wolf, it opened my mind up to all kinds of things, and I wasn't getting them. You know, I nobody gone to college before, so we didn't know what we were getting into.
So it sounds like you were more of a humanities kind of guy. You want to learn about the human condition, literature, the arts, and you found yourself in an engineering and mathematics course.
Yeah. So I dropped out for 2 years. I got caught in a fire with a near death experience. I was setting fire to a brush pile below a earthen dam at a golf course we were building, and the matches I had weren't any good. So I went up and got new matches. It was 98 degrees, no wind moving, in a deep valley. I struck the matches, and as I did and looked out, I saw the fireball start right out the end of my fingertips. And suddenly I'm looking down on myself in the fire. And then I'm high enough I can see above the dam and see the farmland around there that we're building the golf course. Then I'm higher, I see more farms, and then I'm higher and I can see the town near where we lived, and I can see the ridge where our family farm was. And then I go through a long dark tunnel and I break out into a lagoon, a Pacific lagoon in water. And I swim to the beach, and there's a path through the sawgrass. And I start down this path and I go up over the beach and I start into a woods, of pine woods like Valhalla. And I come down to a river and there's a boat. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, what? And then I hear people from the far side calling on me to get in the boat and come across the river. And I'm thinking, my God, this is the Roman Latin river Styx. And I'm going to die. And the people I hear calling to me to come across, two of the people are my grandparents, and I'm sure these are my grandparents. And my father was an orphan. I'd never met him, and yet I knew that was who was calling to me to get in the boat and come across. And I started saying no, 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 because I didn't want to do this. And suddenly everything backed up, and I went back through the forest. I went down through the beach. I went into the lagoon. I dropped down through the tunnel. I'm laying on the ground. I'm rolling in the dirt to get the fire off my clothes. I get on a tractor and go back to the boss. The boss takes me to the hospital. I spend 24 days with second and third degree burns over 30% of my body. And I decide maybe I ought to look into going back to college.
That's a terrific story. A lot of people have related similar types of almost Jungian symbolic near death experiences, and yours sounds particularly vivid.
Yeah, and at the time, this was 1965, you didn't talk about these things. So I talked to my doctor about it. He was an Austrian who, in 1938, left Austria to escape Hitler because he was a Jew. So he was trained in the European medicine. And he said, there are things that we know about we don't understand. So he believed me.
Yeah, talking about Carl Jung, he might have been conversant in some of that. So, symbols, archetypes,
Yes.
In fact, we've got these images and feelings programmed into us. That might be why we have these stories of the river Styx, because people have experienced similar kind of things, maybe have actually lived to tell the tale as you have.
Yeah, and it. So I decided to settle down. Get married, have a family, go to college. I'd work full time, go to school part time, and that was 6 years of being married. The first 2 years were the honeymoon. The next 2 years were marriage. In that next 2 years, my father took his life, and her parents used my dad's suicide to try and split us up. So the last 2 years became kind of a civil war.
What was their rationale for short circuiting your marriage?
What was the reaction? What?
What was their rationale for trying to pull the plug on your marriage?
Two things. My father's death, suicide. I understood what was going on. I mean, he could no longer farm, he could no longer ride horses, he could no longer do the things he wanted. Life was done because he was badly shot up. And the second thing was I was going for a chemistry degree, and we would leave where we would leave the Quad Cities because there wasn't any chemical business there to work in. So they were seeing their daughter go leave, and they were using my dad's death as a pinnacle. And I overheard her father one day in their kitchen while I was in their living room trying to arrange dates for her with a guy he worked with. So I knew I was in a real bad situation.
How old were you at this time?
I would have been 26.
Okay, so still pretty young. Your marriage is imploding. No children at this point.
No, I had a son.
Oh, you did have a son at this point.
Yes,
How old was the son during this dilemma?
3, 4, 5 years old.
Okay, so real domestic disaster.
Correct. And as an example, there's a place in Rock Island called Hunters Club who had the best cheeseburgers, hamburgers, French fries, breaded pork tenderloins. And I would go there once in a while on a night after work because I stayed open till 3 in order to get to relax. And so, and my wife at that time was working in the hospital, and she and the girls would go down there. And they had a bar side and a restaurant side. And I'd tell her I'm going to stop at Hunter's, and she'd say okay, and she'd tell me we're going to stop at Hunter's, and I'd say okay. And so she came back one night when she was 20 years and 8 months old and told me they'd sat on the bar side. In this time period, right then, some kid had come out of another bar, hopped in his Mustang, drove 3 blocks, and at doing 80 mile an hour, ran a red light, T-boned a car, and killed the mayor's grandparents. They were cracking down on underage drinking like you wouldn't believe. And I said, what the hell are you doing? Think about this, they're cracking down. Oh, we'll be fine. So it's the end of the year, or end of the semester, and I told her I'm going to stop at Hunter's, and she's okay. So I stop at Hunter's, and I hear somebody step right next to me and sit down next to me, and I turn, and there's my wife. And she gives me this big grin, like, ha ha, I'm here. So I said, let's go to the bar, or let's go to the restaurant side. Oh, no, we're fine here. The bartender came over, put down the napkin, asked her what she wanted, and I said, check her age. So he says, okay, let's see some ID. She hands him her billfold. He looks at her and says, you're going to have to come back in 4 months. She was 6 foot. When she stood up, I swear to God, she was 7 foot. Grabbed her purse, grabbed her billfold, threw it in her purse, stormed out. Hank, the bartender, leaned over and he says, "Thanks for the tip. How did you know she was underage?" I said, "Well, that's the wife." He goes, "That was your wife? My God, she could have stayed. She looked old enough." I says, "Hank, all it takes is two cops to walk through the door there, and she's busted for underage. I'm busted for contributing. You're busted for serving. This isn't good." He says, "You're right." So I got home that night. She was going around the living room in circles at about 20 mile an hour. And I kept repeating that you're underage. We could have gone to the restaurant side. You're underage. Finally she calmed down. And so the night that she turned 21, we went out and saw a movie she wanted to see, and we had dinner at a place she wanted. And then after the movie, we went back to Hunter's Club, and she waited until those two bar stools were empty, and we went up and sat in those two bar stools. Forgive and forget isn't in her vocabulary.
Well, there you go. She staked the claim.
Yeah. But I sat there as this was evolving, and I thought to myself, if I give up, I'm giving up the rest of my life. I'm going to have a bit in my mouth and a saddle on my back. It does nothing for a horse. It does less for a man. I'm not going to be rode. So that was, well, it just, things fell apart and fell apart. And then she started running around with this doctor she worked with at the hospital. And I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong, but I found out I divorced her on February 15th, and on February 16th, he dumped her. And she spent about a year running around, and then she wanted to come back. In the meantime, I'd met a woman at college who, the first night we went out, waiting for the movie to start, we sat discussing the philosophical writings of Albert Einstein. And few people know Einstein wrote philosophy, let alone discuss it. And she was strikingly attractive, like a Raquel Welch, and knew it, and knew anybody would buy her groceries the rest of her life. She wanted to be taken for the person she was. It was a whole new experience. She changed my life. So then I waited 13 years, and I got married the second time after I moved to California, and I took a job in aerospace. And I was married 10 months, and I came home one Thursday afternoon at 4:45 and found out my second wife never divorced her first husband.
So back up for a second. This woman that you married 13 years later is someone different than the Albert Einstein philosophy buff. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. She wasn't that strongly intellectual. She's very intelligent and very smart. And she had talked to the Navy, and the Navy reserves would enlist her to go through med school. And then she had an 11-year obligation. We had talked about this, and because going to college and being married and working is an awful lot of strain on everything.
So just to summarize here, first marriage didn't work out. She was a bit of a prankster, but you had the family drama.
Yeah,
Sounds like some infidelity. You got divorced. 13 years later, when you're a professional man, you marry again. Turns out she's still married to some other dude.
right.
All right.
He filed on her, she filed on him. Neither one, each one thought the other one had finished it. Neither one,
At least that's what she told you.
right. But that meant that we were eligible for an annulment. That meant that it never happened. That meant there were no obligations. We had no real estate. We had no children. You just walked away from it. So,
All right. So that's marriage number two, which was kind of an almost. But you're doing a big leap here. So it sounds like you go from college boy, farm boy to college boy to professional. So what'd you do? Apply your engineering skills that you hated to acquire in a job? What happened here?
Okay, so after the divorce, I stayed for 11 years in the Quad Cities working as a machinist and a layout inspector in order to get my son raised. The first 7 years, I got sued by the wife 13 times.
All right, that's an average of almost twice per year. That's pretty
Right.
good. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And it kept me broke. I mean, I literally sewed patches on the patches on my jeans that I wore to work.
So
But
were you taking care of you had one kid from the marriage, and you were sole caregiver for the son?
yeah, yeah. And we finally, the 13th time, went into court, and what should have been a 20-minute increase in child support, she and her lawyer were trying like hell to get far more money. They irritated the judge to where he came back and listened to our talk about 13 times in 7 years as harassment, and he ruled against them.
How did she succeed in suing your ass 13 times in 7 years when you were the sole caregiver? What grounds did she have to get money out of you?
Well, she had custody of him, and she was raising him, and I was paying child support.
Ah, okay. All right. So she was actually raising the boy and you were working to support both of them.
Right.
All right.
And she couldn't get alimony, so she was trying like hell to get more money for him in place of the alimony. That was after the doctor she had thought she had boresighted dumped her the day after I divorced her.
All right. So it sounds like you had a rough time with that situation. And
Yes,
then you have the second almost marriage.
yes.
All right. And then what about your professional career? You make a leap there from machinist.
Okay, so I went from being a machinist and layout inspector for Deere to being a manufacturing engineer for General Dynamics in Pomona, California, when my son turned 18.
All right, so you're working for John Deere and then you work for the pretty much the DoD at General Dynamics. Were you working on what, military stuff?
Yes.
All right.
And so, and after I got out there, that's when I met the not quite wife. And we went places and did things. And I was teaching her father how to run a bulldozer, and because he wanted to start this small ranch and raise horses. And that's how I met her. And it seemed like we were going the same places and doing the same things. When I enjoyed being with her. But then after it came out that she was still married to her first husband, I just dropped it. It was an annulment. It never happened. No more legal obligations. I was done.
And it sounds like your kid was 18. You're working for General Dynamics in California, it sounds like. And you're what? In your mid to early 30s at this point, maybe mid 30s?
Mid 30s.
All right. So
And
this is the next bud chapter. You're single again, your kid is 18, you got a good job. Now what?
so he joined the Marine Corps.
All right.
And after 24 days, they put him out with excessive curvature of the spine, Sherman's syndrome.
All right.
And as a consequence, he went back home. His mother leaned on him heavily to go back to college because if he went back to college, that continued the child support. And then she'd have that much more money. In the meantime, she had remarried, and she and her husband were trying like hell to get money from me. So it just everything blew up.
All
And
right. Sounds like she is the gift that kept on giving for you.
yes, and so um, I left. She got a judgment against me for child support at General Dynamics, which ended my career at General Dynamics for possible, promotions and such. So I went to work for Douglas Aircraft. In the meantime, I took the copies of the court orders that I got. I made 3 copies of them. I made 1 copy and sent to him, and then others I wrote whereas I spent 6 years throwing 12 to 16 ton of steel a night out the back door of a John Deere warehouse, and got up every morning to go to college for you and your mother to have a better life. Whereas you will not communicate with me and not work with me. Whereas you feel that I owe you a living. Resolved, there will be no further contact between you and I. My mother had completely jumped all over me for everything that was going on and how wrong I was. Second copy, whereas, resolved, there will be no further contact between you and I. Mailed it off. My youngest brother, same thing. He called me up, chewed me out, told me all the things, what a terrible person I was. So, copy of the court order, bottom of it, whereas, resolved, there shall be no further contact between you and I. Then I called my other brother, my middle brother, in Savannah, Georgia, and told him what I'd done, and he says, sounds good to me. So there was no contact. Now I have an aunt and uncle who stepped in and took over guiding, mentoring my son. They didn't have any children, and they saw what was going on and understood. And they got him into Western Illinois University and worked with him and supported him. And in the meantime, I got reports from them on what was going on. It wasn't like there was a total wall drawn. There was a few cracks in it. But I never said anything or done anything with him. And I got pneumonia. And I was home. I was in the hospital, a week. And then I had to be home 3 days before I could go to work. And the second day I was home, the phone rang, and it was my son. And he says, in 2 weeks, I was going to graduate. I'm going to graduate. And then I was going to call you and tell you that I put myself through college. It turns out that after a year of putting up with his mother, he couldn't stand her any more than I could because he's a lot like me. And as a consequence, he'd left home and gone out on his own and put himself through college. That,
Well, it sounds like he took that self actualization to heart, and based on the beginning of this conversation, he's since done pretty well for himself.
yes, yes. He's a senior soil scientist for the USDA. There's only 5 people in the nation with his classification.
And then hopefully he didn't get doged out of a job.
No, they have a viable product they're turning in.
All right.
So he's
So I think a lot of our listeners and viewers can relate to some of your family anguish. It seems pretty sadly common. I know I
yeah,
can relate to certain aspects of your story as well. The relationship between husbands and wives and fathers and sons and daughters can be complicated, often is.
yes. And it's the biggest gamble I ever took in my life. I gambled that he and his mother wouldn't get along, that he'd get on his own, and he didn't graduate from the Marine Corps, but he did put himself through college, and that is an equivalent of, becoming a Marine. You've done something on your own that you can look back and say, I did it.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think one of the big dilemmas that people today have, especially the younger people, and I know I sound like an old fart, is this idea that you gotta work for it. No pain, no gain. And
Yeah.
the best way to build character is to just go out there and do it yourself instead of mom and dad and society taking care of you.
Yes.
So I think that's a message that's been lost, and I think our generation now is enduring the result of that sense of entitlement.
Yes. Well, I served on groups, teams, interviewing people being hired into Boeing. And they were looking for a high IQ and college grades that were good and all that sort of thing. And I would say to these people, tell me what you can provide for the group and how you can work with the people. What have you succeeded at? What have you done? Why should I hire you besides your IQ scores and your college grades? Impress me with your accomplishments. And it's given me a decided prejudice, I should say.
Yeah, well, as a society, we've been weighting certain standards higher than others. And we have put this idea of an undergraduate degree and the trappings of the American middle class first and foremost. And what we've forgotten, I think, is just the development of character and
Yes.
the need to work hard and be gritty and deal with the realities of life and basically grow up. I think that's one of the major issues for a lot of the young people today, especially the men, especially the young men are lost these days. And I think part of that problem is just this idea that you go out there and you fend for yourself. There's no parachute, there's no going back home, there's moving forward and taking responsibility for oneself. And I think that that's a shame, and we're feeling it as a society.
Yeah. There's, and the accomplishments at work. I made good money. I did a lot. We were on the 787 aircraft. We built the global collaboration environment working with the partners and suppliers. A man named Randolph Evans and I were handed the problems to solve. I had the production experience, I had engineering experience. He had worked defense, he knew how to work with the government, he knew how to work with contracts. We made a good team. And problem would come up, we'd form a team and work our way through it.
You didn't work on the software, did you?
I'm not a no, I don't enjoy that. Oh,
Yeah, I'm being a little facetious with some of the problems that the 787 had. So,
yes,
yeah.
yes. And so after first flight, they had an after action report, and our boss got up and said that if Randolph and I hadn't worked together, the first flight would have been delayed another year.
Well, that's a bold statement coming from a farm boy
Yeah.
from Illinois.
And a couple of years ago, I got an email from one of the women that I'd worked with who became a director and vice president. And she sent me an email and said she appreciated the time I took, what I had taught her. She'd been able to use it. It had been a great help, and she very much appreciated this. And those are the kind of things that it's hard to put a value on, but that really makes you feel good.
Yeah, accolades or at least kudos from colleagues are in the priceless category because you've connected with a team toward a common end, and it's the kind of praise that comes from the heart, which is
Yeah,
she didn't have to do that,
right.
and also it's an extension of appreciation
Yeah.
for what you've done. That feels good.
And so to be a little bit on the negative side, there's a Project Management Institute, and they have this project management professional certificate you can get. And it once was an honor, but it's now just a certificate for clerks. They have become like a union. They've become a big business dealing with big business, and they've lost their original purpose. And it's a shame because there's good project managers out there who are driven to get this PMP, and it's it's just a clerk thing. It doesn't mean that you're a project manager. It doesn't mean that you go in and solve problems. It doesn't mean that you manage what's going on. It doesn't mean that you deal with people. It's just you put so many hours doing this and now you got a certificate.
Well, it sounds like certifications in general, inclusive of most undergraduate education. You've got
Yes.
people spending $250,000, 4 years of studies, ostensibly, and you could wipe your ass with that piece of paper for the most part because we have now commoditized higher education and,
Yeah.
in a sense, blackmailed the American middle class to feel that without that certification, your child is dead in the water, when most of the skills happen in reality, in real life, on the job with practical training.
And I've got a master's of science in project management. Think of it as a highly specialized MBA. And it was a great thing because they went in and taught you what you had to know and how to use it and how to think with it. And I'm very much proud of what I've done, what I've accomplished. But I have an entirely different degree, and like I said, a highly specialized MBA. And it was what we did. And Randolph had the same degree, and that's how we solve problems. In
Well, it's
fact,
great to feel pride in one's career like that. You also had a couple other kids too, is that right? Based on how we opened the conversation, you have your son who found himself, taught
well,
himself, trained himself, worked himself through college.
yeah.
Where did these other kids come from in the Bud story?
Well, my daughter-in-law.
Okay, all right. Now we skipped a marriage here.
No, no, no. I never had children with the second marriage.
Oh, okay.
I only
Well,
had,
we skipped the second marriage. I think we capped it with this stillbirth of an annulled second marriage,
right.
but we didn't make it to number three, which is technically number two. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there's no third marriage per se.
Okay, so
The night
the
in the early
the step kids come from where?
well, in the early 1990s, I found out that the way we were raised, my two brothers and I attract women with borderline personality disorder.
I think that's probably all men.
Yeah, I don't know. Get it? And it it became it just I read up on what it was and what had happened, and my ex-wife was like click 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 click, and my not quite wife wasn't quite the same. Not so many clicks, but who knows? And so I dropped out of the dating game for a while, you know. And then in 2004, 2003, a friend of mine went to the Seattle Symphony, came back and told me, I got this woman you got to meet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You hear that all the time. So he told me that they had gotten talking, and he talked about he and I shot competition. So she said, well, she used to shoot jackrabbits, but she didn't have any guns today. So he loaned her my gun collection on the spot. We took her down and practiced with her a couple times, entered a match. Out of 5 matches, she won 3, I won 1.
All right, so she impressed you with her marksmanship, which is a slight change from the other woman who impressed you with her philosophy of Einstein.
Well, yeah, but both of them are in it's independent thought, you know.
Yeah, they're go-getters in some form, right?
And so then we got to shooting, and she's been well, she's been my she took me to the symphony and taught me about symphony. And I taught her about shooting. We've traveled the country together. We've gone to the East Coast several times to shoot in the national matches. We shoot on the matches 3 out of 4 weekends during the summer together. And we do things together, and she's just become a part of my life.
So you're using the present tense now, Bud. So
Yes,
you guys are still together?
yes,
All right, so you met in 2004. This is marriage or at least life partner number 3.
yes,
And this one seems to have worked out.
yes,
So if at first you don't succeed, keep on trying until you do
yes.
succeed.
It's hard to describe. I mean, we go places, we do things. If we don't agree on something, we discuss why we don't agree it and come to a common understanding. It's the type of situation you want to be in.
Well, it's like two strikes and the third you're in. So you figured it out, or maybe you got lucky. It's hard to say, but you might have learned a few things along the way too, I'm assuming.
Yes,
And it's nice to have somebody that you could gel with and be with without this kind of conflict that you're used to.
yes,
And has she been supportive of you? You got diagnosed in 2016. Sounds like she's been a good caregiver for you,
yes,
in addition to being a good life partner in general.
yes. She takes me to the doctor's appointments in Seattle because she's got a small car and I got a big pickup. She wants to be there to hear what's going on and talk with the doctors. I've been very fortunate. I've had no contact with medical other than burns and a severe concussion when I was 38. And this is all new to me. And she was a great guide, mentor, nurse, sometimes Nurse Cratchit, and me through this. She's been a big part of the 9 years that I've gotten. It's hard to verbalize.
That's terrific. It sounds like you're a creature of appreciation and gratitude. So you've had your thrills and spills. You were had a near-death experience. You were burned. You had at least a couple unsuccessful big relationships. You had tensions with your son. You've had work trials as well, but you're reminiscing now from the vantage point of that sense of gratitude and appreciation. That is inspirational to hear. What about you makes you look at the bright side rather than dwelling on the negative?
Two things. First of all, what I talked about my father. You just have to keep going. And in order to keep going, you got to look for the positive and what's going on. And secondly, the people I've learned to associate with. I shoot rifle competition. They're a great bunch of people. You can leave $12,000 worth of equipment sitting on a table and nobody's going to mess with it or steal it. Uh, if you're shooting in national matches and you're making a mistake, the guy next to you tells you about it. So you won't make the mistake, even though you're shooting the same targets, the same competition. I've set national records. I've had a national title. It's been that sort of thing. I'm a Freemason. I joined Masonry. And the guy, when we were young, my brothers and I, neighbors, two neighbors, brothers, took an interest in my brothers and I and worked with us because they saw that farming wasn't going to be the future that it was then, and guided us away from being a farm kid. And I ended up project manager, senior business system analyst, working, solving problems. My second brother is a luthier, builds stringed instruments. He's got a pile of them sold in Germany. He's got an agent in Atlanta, Georgia, he's passed away, who took every one that he built and sent it to Germany. And he had an innovative way for the pickups on them in order to get better sound out of them. My youngest brother went through the Naval Academy, graduated, was a naval architect. He's passed away now. But I mean, we've succeeded because people took an interest in us and said, "Hey, farming isn't going to be what it was. You need to look at something else."
So it sounds to me like your baseline was one of milking cows, evolving into farming. So you didn't have much that you guys started with, but you did have an attitude where you were relentless, you were gritty, you didn't take no for an answer, and you wanted to better yourself. And in addition to that sense of purpose, you had this sense of teamwork and team spirit that shines through in what you're saying, that the guy next to you, you want to trust them and you want to work together to a common end, even when you're competing with each other, that
Yeah.
you're a part of something bigger than yourself, and that you can look back with pride and dignity, and that you not only gave it your best shot, but you accomplished many of the goals that you set yourself out to accomplish.
Yes. And I worked with good people. Now, John Deere was not a group of good people. There were a few good people there, but overall, John Deere wasn't a good experience. General Dynamics was, Douglas was, Boeing was an exceptionally good experience because I got to work with people very intelligent. We were out there solving problems. We were doing what we could. We developed our own methodology for solving problems. And I worked on team that worked the internal problems. And there were 6 of us. And the executive would come down and say, "Why don't you guys go take a look at this?" Which was their way of saying, "Fix it." And we had varying degrees of success. I mean, we didn't always bomb. We never bombed, but there's times when we could have done better, but we got pulled to go do something else. But I enjoy solving problems. I worked with a very good group of people. We trained each other. We worked with each other. It's hard to describe my life without having lived it.
Yeah, and it sounds like your life was lived with this combination of individual purpose and direction and focus, coupled with this sense of teamwork, working with other people, helping other people.
Right, right.
So when you look at the different phases, not only of your life, but our American culture and society and values, how do you interpret how the country has changed over all these years, from when you grew up on the farm in Illinois to eventually getting to California and the West Coast? How do you see the culture of America changing around you?
We've lost the goals of education in teaching people to learn, to teach people to, when they're 10 years old and read the Sea Wolf, to we've lost how to talk to these people and encourage them to go on and on and on with their lives. We we need to reevaluate the end products of our education system. Secondly, the biggest problem I see in industry today, Jerry Purnell, who's a science fiction writer, was also an industrial behavior psychologist. And he had his iron law of management. And if you look up Jerry Purnell, Pournelle, on Wikipedia, it gives a very good summation of that. And then it gives you a lot of other clicks to go on to. But what he says is there's a core group within society within each type of group society, whether it's education, manufacturing, medicine, whose existence is to maintain their existence, and they self promote, they self do the things that they think are helping them without realizing the overall goals and not realizing the people on the edges that are sustaining them. And the only thing I can tell you is look up Jerry Purnell on Wikipedia and go through his reasoning and all the clicks to it, because I've seen this wherever I went and whatever I've done. We need to break that away.
Well, it's very, very tribal, right? You've got a professional tribe, you've got a social tribe, you got a family tribe, you got a political tribe. And American tribalism, in all of its different forms, have been part of our strength, but also, as you say, a big part of our weakness. It divides us, it creates animosity and tension. And now, politically, it's just created an enormous mess where we can't even talk to each other anymore. We can't govern coherently. And it's a real, real challenge. And I think your point about having many of its origins in our educational system is bang on point, which is also exacerbated by digital computers,
Right.
smartphones, social media. Everyone is a genius. Everyone has an idea, and our attention spans are about 2 seconds long.
Correct. And it's garbage in, garbage out in many cases. I sat down, let's go with politics for a second. I sat down with my local state representative here in Washington State and proposed to her a way to change the format in the laws so that the format is vision, mission, goals, objectives. When they write this law out, what are they writing it out for? Vision. Then they put in the mission. What are the resources needed to complete it? Goals. What goal are they after? Then objectives. What are the steps along the way to measure your accomplishment, your progress? And your phases when you implement the law is to accept the trigger. Okay, we're going to do this. Do the research that you need to do to make it happen. Act on your research and then terminate. Build the structure that you need. Metrics, efficiency, quality, cycle time, and schedule. Efficiency is how much time and money have you planned on versus what you're using. Quality, are you achieving the quality that you ask for? Cycle times, are you getting it done in the time that you planned on? Schedule, are you hitting your schedule? Cycle time and schedule are two separate things. And what I got told was that's a long journey, and how do you do it? And
Well, you're approaching it as a PMP, as a project manager, and that's not how politicians govern. They don't govern to get anything really done. They govern to get reelected. And
correct.
that's two different things. And that's been a problem for both sides of the political aisle, with promises that are made and never fully kept, at least when it comes to infrastructure and getting stuff done for the public, spending billions of dollars in a way that's efficient and actionable. And instead, we rack up the national debt. We keep kicking the can down the road to the next generation. We have a tendency of getting ourselves into pointless wars that backfire on ourselves. And the American empire, which arguably was at its height maybe in the 90s, has been in ways in a state of decline. We still dominate in terms of innovation and technology, entertainment. There's still American strength and leadership in a lot of key areas, but we're losing our grip. And I think it has a lot to do with all these factors that you mentioned. We don't take governance seriously. We don't take education seriously, and we meddle in affairs that is best left alone for the most part.
Yes, it's exactly as you say. The first job of any politician is to get reelected. And the way you do that is you promise bread and circuses.
Yes.
And are the business needs, I mean, the business of government is business. It's not handouts. It's not passing more laws. It's controlling business. And you look at the Constitution, it deals with rights and business and commerce. And what do we fight the wars about? The revolution about? Commerce. I don't care what you want to say.
Yeah, if there is regulation, it's just ensuring a level playing field for business, regulating, commerce across borders, usually state to state. And the way the framers framed it is a much narrower vision of government, more or less staying out of people's way while ensuring their rights to just do what they need to do. And we've veered off that path as well.
Yes. Yes. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, what I see as transgressions on all of them just upsets me.
Yeah, on the one hand, we have this literalism, which has its own paradoxes and absurdities. And on the other, we have this sense of just reinterpreting things based on convenience.
Yes.
And we've lost focus. So we're pragmatic in terms of what's happening right now, but historical context has become hysterical, and it's very, very frustrating. I think the founding fathers, the usual group, Madison, Hamilton, Franklin, Washington, the whole host of them would look at our age right now and just be astonished how we've distorted that pure and simple vision.
Yes. Yes. When I went through my master's program, I wrote a lot of term papers and such, quoting George Washington and what his ideas were and such. And he was a farmer, and he became a general, and he went back to being a farmer. Then he got elected president, and then he went back to being a farmer again. His whole idea was commerce and such. And something that's little known, there was a farming magazine published in England, distributed in the colonies, and they had letters to the editor. King George III had an interest in agriculture and wrote under a pseudonym, and George Washington wrote to this magazine, letters to the editor, and the two of them had extensive conversations through this magazine, unknowing who that they were talking to King George and George Washington. You know,
Yeah, that's fun little anecdotes like that. When the world was a lot smaller and there were much fewer channels of communication, you had some of that crossover, right?
right, right. It's well, in my experience solving problems, 75% of the problem is communication. 25 or 15% is training, and 10% is everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems about right. It's the old Aristotelian Nicomachean ethics kind of thing. Two total strangers run into each other in the middle of the wilderness. If you got decent communication and they're decent enough people, then they're bound to agree as long as they can speak clearly and express themselves, right? Which is this ideal that most people really just want to succeed. That if we could just sort out the communication aspect and just understand each other better and give each other a break, listen perhaps as much as we speak, we'd solve 90% of most human problems. We're going to fundamentally disagree, but there needs to be a sense of humility and a sense of human decency. And unfortunately, that's been crushed under the weight of social media pressure, where being a troll and a bully is going to get you far more clicks and likes and shares than if you're a nuanced thinker and a polite human being. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's when I worked with Art McConnell he led the team. He had one sign and one picture on his office that said, "Not as lean, not as mean, still a Marine." And I was raised in the Corps, so he and I got along. And one day we bumped heads 3 times, and he fired me 3 times. Now, his way of firing you was to say, Boeing's a big company. Maybe you ought to find a job somewhere else. And so we came back. I came to work the next morning, and he comes over to my desk. I got there before he did. And he says, "You find another job yet?" And I said, "No, working on it." He says, "Well, you don't need to work on it. I'm not saying you're right, but you don't need to work on it."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that sense of humor, humility with hubris is it's a little bit lacking these days, right? Just to
Right.
kind of look at yourself and laugh a little bit and lighten up, right? Despite all the hardships and the trials and tribulations, you come to a realization that that's what a lived experience is all about. And there's no such thing as a perfect life, but you can have a life worth living, which is not only attainable, but I think you embody it, which is you're looking back at all your years through the ups and downs, and it's not through the lens of judgment, but it's through the heartfelt expression of doing the best you can with what you had, operating with a sense of purpose, looking out for the other guy, and always moving forward.
When I was 12, I went to the fields doing a man's work. When I was 65 in retirement time, my son and my daughter in law were both worried about their jobs. My granddaughter was starting college. I said, "Look, I enjoy what I'm doing. I feel good. I got plenty of work. I'll work the next 4 years and be the backup for Amanda, in case one of you loses your job." Okay, so I helped her here and there during college, but I was never directly supportive. So I went to her graduation. I came back. I ran up my Deere retirement, my Douglas retirement, my Boeing retirement, my Social Security, or anticipated expenses, factored in 1.5% inflation. Took a look at it, looked good. So I put in separate from company retirement. 20 minutes later, my boss is at my desk. And I told her what I just told you. My granddaughter's out of college. It's time to retire. I've got 57 years working. And so she says, "Come to my office at a little after 2. We'll talk about this." So we did. She was a farm girl from south of Atlanta, Georgia, so we could talk directly and understand each other. And so it came that time, but it was a very good time. I enjoyed what I did. I understood what I did. My old boss from Deere, we set Deere's management on their ass a couple times with solving problems. I solved a problem that saved him hundreds of thousands of dollars. What I get for it? Not a goddamn penny. But I have the satisfaction of knowing I solved it.
Well, that's intrinsically rewarding, right?
And the first job that I got problem I got handed with Boeing was a production cost of the 757 aileron. And I went in and took a different look at it. And I solved that problem. I saved Boeing $33 million. What I get? Another problem to solve.
Yeah, but the check did clear at the end of the month.
Yes.
Yeah, you had a fun team to work with.
Yes.
And to your point, you went on to solve more problems and feel good about yourself. And now you have the joy of reminiscing and even the cynical glint in your eye that you made a lot of other people a lot of money.
Yeah. 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 It how to say it. It's hard to describe how screwed up some things can be and how narrow people think when they go to solve problems.
Yeah, well, if there wouldn't be patients, there wouldn't be doctors now, would there?
Right.
So if everyone would be an efficient project manager born into common sense and evidence-based thinking, then you'd be out of a job.
I turned in my thesis for my degree, 324 pages. They had a conniption fit. It isn't, this is for a master's, this is not for a doctorate. Well, yeah, so they leaned on me and leaned on me to cut it back, and I cut it back to 124 pages. And they said, well, everybody else is turning in 50 or 60. I said, if I could have done it in 50 or 60, I would have, and it's a bare bones thesis. But maybe I'm just an overachiever. I don't know.
Well, good for you, bud. I think that's been emblematic throughout your story. And now with the clock sadly ticking, you have an opportunity looking back. You had a near death experience when you were young. You had that spontaneous brush fire that you mentioned.
Yeah.
You took that journey in your own psyche, which might or might not be an indication of what's in store. How do you feel about not only the life you've lived, but this idea of checking out, of finally succumbing to the cancer and going where we all eventually go? Does it freak you out? Are you afraid? Do you sometimes wake up and realize that your time is precious? How do you feel about being at the crossroads right now?
Okay, so first of all, that near death experience was genuine.
Yeah, I'm not knocking it. I'm not
No, I'm
saying
no,
it was made up by you. I'm using that as kind of a context
yeah,
for
but it's
where you're in.
so I made it the last time, I'll make it this time. Uh, Alice says that God isn't ready for me and the devil's afraid I'll take over. So
All
it
right. So you're saying that you've been given maybe 3, 4 months, but you're resolute and you're like, well, screw that. I'm taking a few more years.
yeah. And I've gotten the one book published. I'm working on a second book. We raised a baby owl when we were farming when I was 15. And the story about raising it. And I'm working hard to get that published and get out. But everybody should write a book, even if you don't get it published. It teaches you to see how other people live and think, and so you can tell a story in a way that they can refer to and understand. And no book is written until it's been rewritten 25 times. That came from reading about Steinbeck and Hemingway. Both of them, when they talked about the writing, they both mentioned you got to rewrite it 25 times. I've
Yeah.
been a storyteller all my life. I've had, well, I've had incidences that are unbelievable, but they did happen. And I've learned that life changes. Ride the bumps. Keep going. And the other thing is, now I told my granddaughter this when she got her undergrad degree. You're stuck in school and at work with people who are there. In the other hours in your life, you have a choice. Choose the people that support you. and encourage you and such.
Yeah, I think that's the best advice ever, which is follow the love, or at least the affection,
Yeah.
and be with people where the kindness is reciprocal.
Yes.
So it's so tempting sometimes to, fall for someone alluring or exciting, when at the end of the day and at the very beginning of each day, it's really all about them all the time. And that's not a satisfying place to be.
And the other thing is spend the money.
Yeah.
You can't have it ground up and put in alcohol and inject it in with the embalming fluid.
Yeah, you can't take it with you,
Yeah.
as that play went, which is pretty accurate. Spend it, live it, and at the end of all your days, no one's really going to care, right? Just as long as you had a good time and you had a life worth living, that's all. That's the only item on the spreadsheet you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's the cancer was a big surprise, and I was going to retire in Montana. I wanted to get back to a rural thing, and I got transferred to Swedish Cancer Institute in Seattle after I'd been to Providence and Everett. Everett gave me 90 to 120 days. Swedish told me 10 to 20 years, and it's been an eventful almost 10 years.
Well,
And
I wish you another 10. And you do have the book out already,
yeah,
on the ebook is out, right?
right. And we'll soon have the covers done after Christmas, and we'll have the paperback because people want a copy that I've signed.
All right. Well, I'll put the link to your ebook so they could buy it in the description of this podcast, so people who are interested can get it
Yeah,
off Amazon.
and
And that's basically some of the stories that you've told on this podcast. It's an overview of your life. Is that right?
in part, I've got another one I'd like to write about the second half of my life. This was a farming part, small town part, but everything in that book happened, just not necessarily the way I wrote it.
Well, that's the art of it, right? Where you
Right.
got memories and you stitch it together in a way that's a compelling read. And that's really the art of storytelling. You're not lying, you're just drawing into your own memory banks, tapping into your own head and heart, and doing it in a way where you kind of arrange things into a narrative that keeps people interested, and they can walk away with their own good memories of you and what happened, and maybe learn a thing or two and then relate to it in their own lives.
Yeah. The My goddaughter came up last weekend for my birthday, and she
81, right?
81, and she read the book on the air flight up from Panama City, Florida to Atlanta to Seattle. And she got off the plane and she says, "We got to talk." I says, "What do you mean?" She says, "What all is in that book?" And I said, "It all happened." So we had to go down through particular instances that she just couldn't believe had happened. But fiction is limited by the imagination. Life is not limited by the imagination.
Yeah, and it's often a good starting point for vivid imaginations, and at the very least, fond memories of some crazy stuff that went down. So, thank you for sharing all this with us, Bud. I appreciate it. I'm sure our viewers and listeners appreciate it. We'll put the link to your book in the description, and by the likes of it, and by how we're hearing you, you don't have a limited time. You have endless time to keep going and fighting it, right? There's
Right.
an old proverb that the more you complain, the longer God lets you live. So 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 keep going, bud, and
Okay.
we'll look forward to the hard copy book, the paperback book coming out after the new year, and hopefully the universe willing, we'll see the second book come from you as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you for your time and your stories and your insights. You're the Yoda of the pod now, sharing the lived experiences of someone who's been there and done that, and we sincerely appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for listening to the No Hair All Heart podcast. Like, comment, and share. We've had some quality time with Bud Hyett. Take care of yourself, Bud.
Okay. You too.